I am writing this after the engagement party because I couldn't sleep. Not because of what my father said, because of what happened afterward. The strange thing is that none of it was new. My parents had been telling me who I was supposed to be for most of my life. Daniel was the investment. I was the backup plan. When Daniel announced he wanted to become a doctor, my parents celebrated as though he had already graduated. They emptied savings accounts, refinanced part of the house, and paid for tutors, housing, exam preparation courses, everything. By the time he finished medical school, they had spent roughly $180,000 helping him get there. I don't resent him for that. At least, I try not to. What stayed with me was a conversation that happened 2 years before he started college. I had brought home acceptance letters from 3 universities. My grades were excellent. My teachers believed I could compete for almost any program I wanted. My father barely looked at the paperwork. A woman's place is with her husband eventually, he said, not angrily, not cruelly, as if he were describing the weather. You don't need degrees. My mother nodded. We need to focus resources where they'll matter most. I remember sitting there, realizing they had already decided the shape of my future. And I wasn't invited into the discussion. For a while, I kept arguing. Then I stopped. There is a point where disappointment becomes inefficient. I took scholarships where I could find them. I worked mornings at a bakery, cleaned offices at night, spent weekends tutoring high school students. There were semesters when I slept so little that entire months blurred together. Daniel never saw most of it, neither did my parents. They saw grades, diplomas, announcements, but not the exhaustion underneath. Years passed. I graduated summa cum laude, then medical school, then residency, then fellowship. Each achievement felt less like a victory and more like crossing another river because there was no bridge. Eventually, I became a surgeon. My parents were technically proud, but their pride always sounded different when they spoke about Daniel. His accomplishments were family accomplishments. Mine were choices. The distinction is difficult to explain unless you've lived it. Last weekend was his engagement party, a beautiful event, good food, good people. A rented hall overlooking a lake. I almost didn't go. But Daniel and I had never been enemies. So I went for most of the evening. Everything felt familiar. Relatives asking about work. My mother introducing me as Daniel's sister. My father moving through conversations with the confidence of a man satisfied with his life's decisions. Then came the toast. Everyone gathered near the dance floor. Glasses were raised. My father stepped forward. He smiled at Daniel. Our greatest success. The room applauded. I felt the old ache immediately, not because I needed him to choose me, because some part of me had always hoped he would eventually stop keeping scores. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel's fiancée, Emily, stood up. At first I thought she wanted to add something to the toast. Instead, she looked directly at me. Her expression changed, confusion first, then recognition. Oh my God. The room grew quiet. She walked a few steps forward. You're Dr. Carter. I froze. So are you. Emily laughed nervously. My mother talks about you constantly. Now everyone was listening. Emily turned toward the guests. 3 years ago, my mom had a ruptured aneurysm. The room became completely silent. The surgeon who led the operation was Dr. Carter. She pointed gently toward me. She saved her life. I wanted to disappear, not because I was embarrassed, because I suddenly understood where this was going. Emily continued. If she hadn't been there that night, my mother wouldn't have lived long enough to see this engagement. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence felt almost physical, not dramatic, just unavoidable. My father looked at me, then at Emily, then back at me again. For perhaps the first time, I saw uncertainty in his face. People began asking questions. How long had I been practicing? What kind of surgeries did I perform? Where had I trained? The answers were ordinary to me, years of work condensed into brief conversations. But I watched something happen around the room. People weren't discovering a new version of me. They were realizing they had never bothered to learn the old one. My father said very little for the rest of the evening, neither did I. There was no confrontation, no apology, no dramatic reconciliation. Life is rarely that tidy. When the party ended, he walked me to my car. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, Emily thinks very highly of you. It wasn't the right thing to say, it wasn't enough, but it was honest, and strangely, that mattered. I drove home thinking about all the years I spent wanting recognition from my parents. Wanting proof that my work counted. That I counted. The truth arrived from somewhere else entirely, from a woman whose mother survived because I happened to be on call one difficult night. That realization hurt, but it also felt freeing. My father may never fully understand what it cost to build my life without the support he gave my brother. He may never see me the way I once wanted him to. And maybe that's the consequence of choices made decades ago. But as I pulled into my driveway, I realized something had changed. For the first time, his approval no longer felt like the missing piece of my story. It was simply something I had learned to live without.